morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A lot of stuff we want to get to today. So Indian trade war heats up. So we will bring you the very latest there. We've actually got a bunch of trade war updates, each more stupid and ridiculous than the last, in my personal opinion. I think yours as well, Saagar.
Oh, yeah. There's no disagreement here. But look, we'll give you the facts. You can make up your mind for yourself.
Yes, that's right. We'll report, you decide. We also have that viral chart. I don't know if you guys saw this, exposing just sort of economic decline for ordinary people in America across the board, basically since the 90s. We're going to dig into that a little bit as it relates directly to housing, affordability, and home ownership. So important one to tackle. We've also got the very latest for you with regard to Epstein. Trump just basically keeps digging the hole deeper. So, and interestingly, they apparently want to try to get Joe Rogan to help them out of their bind.
Let's see if Joe helps
Whether he's amenable to that or not, I don't know. We'll find out. We also are taking a look at the GHF whistleblower who we hosted here, Anthony Aguilar. He made another appearance with Tucker Carlson, this one for a longer interview in person, and there were some truly stunning moments there where he is exposing additional details about GHF and the way that they operate, and also what he anticipates is going to come next. So you definitely want to take a look at that. There's a lot happening in Israel today. They are voting, the security cabinet is voting on what is effectively a plan of outright annihilation. This is not a secret anymore. It's not, it's completely out in the open. Of course, it has been in a lot of ways, but now an official vote being taken on that. So break that down for you. Saagar's got a big UFO update. Many of our fans will think that it's been too long,
It has been too long. My brothers have been asking me what's going on. And listen, I'm subject to the news, okay? So when policymakers start talking about it, perhaps we get some updates. We'll see. I am going to put out a page to the White House press corps to ask some follow-up questions. So hopefully we'll get something.
Okay, all right. We'll work on that. I have a complete guide to why Cory Booker is just the absolute worst. And Christian Smalls, who's been a longtime friend of ours, I think we're the first people ever to have him on back when he was organizing the Amazon Labor Union. So he is a well-known labor activist and organizer here. He was abused by the Israelis attempting to get baby formula into the Gaza Strip. So he's going to join us to tell us all about his experience and the reason that he got involved in this fight to begin with.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to Christian about that. His story, Greta Thunberg got a lot of coverage for what happened, but he's criminally been undercovered in terms of that story and does tell us quite a lot about what's going on in the country. Before we get to that, thank you to everybody who's been subscribing, breakingpoints.com, if you're able to join us for a premium membership. And as we showed you all on Tuesday, we will apologize when we make mistakes here about the premium experience, and we deeply are always working to make sure that it is better. If you can help us out, we would deeply appreciate it. If you can't, no worries, just go ahead. If you're watching this on YouTube, Rumble, wherever, subscribe to the video, to the channel. And then also, if you're listening to this on a podcast, just go ahead and send your favorite episode, any episode that you want, to a friend. It really helps us out, as well as leaving us a 5-star rating. But with that, let's go ahead and get to the tariff war. And so in extraordinary fashion, let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Donald Trump has put a whopping 25% extra tariff on India for Russian oil prices. New Delhi says that the U.S. president's decision is unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable. So let me just read you a little bit about it. He says, quote, "I determined that it is necessary and appropriate to impose an additional ad valorem duty on imports of articles of India, which is directly or indirectly importing Russian Federation oil." So let's explain what the hell is going on here. This has been a kind of a chief problem for the United States now, problem, I guess, of our own making since the outbreak of the Ukraine war, where the United States puts blanket tariffs on all Russian oil imports, obviously here, as well as Russian sanctions for the entire banking system across Europe and elsewhere. The problem in that has always been South Korea, China, India are very willing to buy Russian oil because they don't care necessarily about Ukraine, and of course it's being sold on a discount on their markets, as well as the ability to refine that oil and export it. By the way, much of that oil is exported across the world to many of the people who are also sanctioning Russian oil, just to show you some of the problems in that. The theory, Krystal, is that by stopping India from buying Russian oil, which, by the way, is the second purchaser of Russian oil behind China, who has a lower tariff rate than India right now. Make that one make sense. The problem is that their theory is that by chokeholding the Russian economy, they can finally get Russia to the peace deal table in Ukraine. Now, as I just mentioned, India is just the second largest purchaser of Russian oil. The Chinese are the first. The Chinese are not subject to any tariffs over this entire thing. And second, it still comes down to this theory of the chokehold being applied to Russia that will finally get it to stop in Ukraine. There is not a a single scrap of evidence to show that that is true. The Russian war machine is actually what's fueling the entire economy right now. It's like 20-something% of their GDP. It's increased their overall GDP growth. Their weapons manufacturing is exploding with help from, again, not just India, but China, North Korea, and Iran, many other actors. It really just demonstrates the futility of our trade policy by trying to use it for purposes on Ukraine. And then there's also a bigger question here of what's actually important. Is it Israel and Ukraine? Because that's the message being sent now from the Trump administration. The Trump administration is thinking you or I should pay higher Canadian lumber prices because the Canadian government recognizes the state of Palestine, okay? I don't remember, thinking anything about that whenever it was our trade war. And then second, with India, India is now subject to a 50% tariff. Now, again, just to explain how ridiculous this is, just from geopolitical point of view, if you believe that China is your premier economic competitor, now what do you want to do? You want to make sure that you have good relations with all of the great powers in the rest of Asia. Well, that would include Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and India, namely India, which has always pursued a policy of non-alignment. And so from the first Trump administration, including the second Trump administration, their theory was, hey, we'll have better economic relationship here with India because that will mean that this great power, over 1.4 billion people, rising economic giant, will have closer ties there to make sure that nobody is going to fall into the Chinese orbit and create kind of a strategic balance. We pressured companies like Apple, who we're about to get to move iPhone production to India, all of these other manufacturing problems. Now, look, I'll be fair. India's got a very closed-off economy. I mean, they have insane non-tariff barriers they have for a long time. Their theory, which, by the way, I think is correct, is that allowing, outside Western influence gives these countries too much control over their economy. Can't argue with that. I mean, it's true. I mean, you could look at where they are. That's fine. I mean, I'd be happy to punish them, quote, punish them or tariff them if it had anything to do with, protecting American manufacturing or any of that, while also considering the geostrategic implications. But this has nothing to do with that. It is literally just to try and pressure India and Ukraine, or India and Russia on the war in Ukraine, which has not one scrap of evidence over the last 2.5 years to show that it has actually worked. This is the Biden-Lindsey Graham policy, literally Lindsey Graham policy, used to beg for this from day one. And it's preposterous and actually could send the price of oil sky high if it allows it to continue.
Well, and also the fact that thus far India has chosen, we're just going to stick with Russian oil, is actually a testament to the effective nature of some of their protectionist policies, which helped to buffet them from, the sanctions, or not the sanctions, but the tariffs that are being imposed. I mean, they are sort of like a sanction. They're basically functioning the same way. It's meant as a punishment for them not doing what we want them to do. So it is extraordinary. And I mean, it's also, there's a weirdness to it as well, because ideologically, Modi and Trump have a lot of similarities, both sort of like authoritarian inclined. Modi is a Hindu nationalist. You would think there would be this sort of like natural alliance between them. And instead, as we're going to play later in this block, I mean, you've just absolutely infuriated all of the Indians, sort of across the board. And certainly the Hindu nationalists are disgusted with this attack on their sovereignty, as any country would be. And that's what's been so foolish about this trade war from the beginning, is there's no strategy to it. It's just, let me literally piss off the entire world and never have a clear, coherent strategy about, explain to anyone about what we're doing. And now as we get down to it, we see just how haphazard and counterproductive it truly is. So in Brazil, we're punishing Brazil because we don't like what they're doing with a court case against Bolsonaro. With Canada, we're punishing them because we don't like them recognizing a state of Palestine while we're, busy supporting a genocide there. With India, obviously, we don't like, you're screwing with our ability to crush Russia and put pressure on them. By the way, this is also the guy who promised to resolve that conflict before he even got into office, or within 24 hours, depending on the day of when he got into office. How's that working out? It really is extraordinary to see the way that ordinary American people truly are basically being used as pawns here for Trump's vicissitudes and for him to pursue whatever foreign policy he feels like in that day. And keep in mind, the people who predominantly pay the tariff price are consumers. When you go to the grocery store, when you go to make a purchase, that is predominantly, because most of the costs get passed on to you. As we've both said a million times, we are not opposed to some protectionist policy that makes goddamn sense, but none of this does.
Yeah, and look, again, that's my issue here, is if we want high tariffs, it should be on China and China alone. And then you should make it dramatically attractive to make sure that you put all U.S. industry to push it out of China on a 5 to 10 year plan that they would have to submit. And from that point forward, we can look at exclusions, plans, et cetera, that make strategic sense for the United States. 50% of all GDP will be in Asia in just 5 years. That's why it makes no sense to punish one of the rising powers of Asia when it is for a war in Europe for a country that's not in NATO, that is what number 60 whatever in U.S. bilateral trade, has no impact on the U.S. economy. India is the 10th largest trading partner of the United States. That's even with all of their crazy non-tariff trade barriers.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a massive, I mean, that is literally, guys, I'm talking more than Brazil. I'm talking about probably more than any other, partner that has really come under scrutiny aside of Japan. India now joins Brazil with some of the highest tariffs in the world. So how is it that China, the number one producer of, or the number one problem from an economic competitor level, by the way, the number one purchaser and client state, really the Russians, right? The Russians, what? You think India's the one who's selling them weapons? Or India's the one who's propping up their financial system? No, it's China. And so the Chinese are getting all these crazy exclusions. The whole thing is completely ass backwards. And here's CNBC talking specifically about the price of oil. Let's take a listen.
India and Russia now have to go look for, basically the energy somewhere else. Let's just say they now have to go basically buy it from the United States or buy it from Saudi Arabia. Guess what? Oil price is going to go through the roof. I mean, last year alone, Asia basically imported something like almost 4 million barrels per day of Russian production. I mean, that is the kind of quantity that you just cannot switch off and then decide to replace it, okay, with somebody else's basically oil. And I think that if Indians were to hold out, they might, basically find out for themselves that Trump will tackle on this issue. Because Trump so far has had zero appetite for anything that could lead to a higher oil price. So the question is, will Modi play this game of chicken with him, thinking that Trump is going to fold?
And so there's been similar movement for other countries that have been subject to tariffs like this. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. This is from the president of Brazil, Lula, quote, "I won't humiliate myself. Brazil's president sees no point in tariff talks with Donald Trump." Some 50% tariff on Brazilian goods that took effect on Wednesday. In fact, I just saw a very interesting piece come across my screen, which is about the Brazilians and the Japanese striking a deal on food and beef specifically, because a lot of beef, especially like higher end beef, will be purchased from Japan. And the Brazilians, one of the largest meat exporters in the world, have been trying to break into the Japanese market now for quite some time. But because of the way that the Japanese are now configured with this 15% baseline tariff and others from US goods, they're like, yeah, maybe we'll go elsewhere. I just read Toyota, Honda, and all these other companies are about to take a 15% haircut on most of their profits. I don't have problems with a lot of this stuff per se. I'm not a defender of Toyota or Honda's profits, but I'm saying, what would you want to do? You, instead of some baseline tariff where the Japanese are going to buy our filthy American rice, great for Japan, congratulations, you can have the same hormonal problems that we do. Instead, we would want to encourage Toyota, Honda, and all this to continue the policy that they've been doing, which is building facilities here in America. This is my point about strategic tariffs and all of that. China, again, is actually getting more of a red carpet experience than all of the other countries surrounding it, which the policy of some sort of pivot to Asia would make any damn sense. America right now is addicted to Europe and to the Middle East. It's like we can't get away from it, can't take your eye off the ball. I've been hearing pivot to Asia in this town for 20 years now, ever since the war in Iraq. Never, get anything about it. And the whole thing really is preposterous. It continues to be whenever you continue down the line with the way that these American companies are acting with Trump. I can't even believe this. It's unbelievable. Tim Cook went to the Oval Office yesterday to present Trump with literal gold. Like Trump is a Mongol king of old, like the great Khan Ogadai. And the Duke of Muscovy travels across the steppe to present him with tribute. That's basically what's happening. I'm not making this shit up. Watch it for yourself.
This bottom was made here in the U.S., California. And this glass comes off the Corning line. It's engraved for President Trump. It's a unique unit of one, designed it for you. And the base comes from Utah and is 24 karat gold. Congratulations,
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
President.
It's
Thank you so
fantastic.
much.
The great people of Kentucky.
Great people of Kentucky. Listen, this is again.
This country is a joke.
Do we want America? Do we want companies like Apple to invest a lot more in America? Yes. But the problem with this stuff is it's all headline, grabbing. It makes no sense. Put this up there on the screen. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Because of the way that Tim Cook and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang have kissed Trump's ass, they have now got themselves exempt from a huge amount of the semiconductor tariffs. NVIDIA, by the way, has pulled off the coup of the century, in case anybody knows. There were previous chips, the H20 chips, which were not supposed to be exported to China, which got themselves a actual exemption from the Trump administration, basically after Jensen paid like $5 million or whatever to attend some Mar-a-Lago dinner, and he was actually at the White House just yesterday. But it's all because of this. Now, Apple, what they say here is like, oh, they're going to invest another $100 billion to the United States. Well, if you look, deeply, this was on top of a $500 billion investment plan that they had for America. Well, it was just repackaged spending plan that they'd already put in their public documents, according to all of the industry analysts. So, look, is it great to have an extra 100 bill? Yeah, absolutely. But if you read a little bit further, quote, Apple has made similar announcements dating back. Its investment, though, in manufacturing, quote, pales next to its investments in China, India, and elsewhere in Southeast Asia, where nearly all of its devices are made. The reason why he's holding up that glass as some sort of great thing is because that's going to be the only part of the iPhone that actually comes from America. And even then,
shittiest part.
It's not even going to come from all the iPhones, okay? It's not like it's going to be the exclusive supplier of the glass for all of the globe. And, it's like, this is where, the Trump people, they call you a hater and all these things if you just read and you look a little bit deeper into all of this. Well, and so people need to wonder, like, is this an acceptable way to be conducting our trade policies? Why I find it just so, like, maddeningly stupid.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this, like that thing that you saw with, oh, here's your, sir, here's your unique personalized piece of glass and your 24 karat gold base and what, like, this is the way our country is run now. That's it. I mean, not only did he get, with the chips, he's gotten his carve-outs there. There's actually a consumer electronics carve-out with the India tariffs as well, which obviously massive. I mean, it probably benefits Apple more than any other company. And so this is why Wall Street has been okay with this, because if you are a gigantic corporation or a billionaire, you can pay the price of admission to get your little carve-out and your goodies. I mean, when we talk about like a captured oligarchy, that's what we're talking about. People who can be in the favored inner circle and they can get their needs met. And as long as they play by the rules of, total and complete deference and going in and kissing his ass and doing all these sorts of things, then they're going to be the favored ones and they're going to amass a tremendous amount of wealth. And if you aren't in that inner circle, then who cares? You get screwed. I mean, the man is just completely for sale. And that means that our trade policy and our foreign policy, everything is completely for sale to the highest bidder. So when you see Tim Apple, going into the Oval Office and making this fawning display, when you see, going back to the inauguration, having all those billionaires, some of the richest people in the world, standing behind Trump and doing similarly like slavish bootlicking displays, making these big, we're going to invest this much, we're going to invest that much. A bunch of the trade deals too. It's the same thing when we covered the EU trade deal. Oh, we're going to invest $500 billion in the US. And it's like, well, I mean, we can't actually enforce that, but it's a nice idea. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He just wants the headline. That's all he wants. And these stupid mainstream reporters, it seems like never do they question it. They just get a press release from the White House and they take it as gospel.
Look,
and they've been taken for a ride.
But
how many times are you going to be taken for a ride? I mean, on all these trade deals, on all these big corporate announcements, never once do they look and go, oh, well, maybe we should hold off a minute and see if this is actually real. They just run with the headline, and that's all he cares about.
Look, I mean, to the extent that I'll defend them, it's that most of them are so dumb that they literally don't know how to read. If you follow the
You would think you would have some pride. It's
if you just
embarrassing.
read the Wall Street Journal Journal, the Financial Times, there are excellent traders, Bloomberg, the financial press, they'll tell you all what's going on out in the open. Let me explain. I want to linger on the stock market part because this has been driving me nuts when everyone's like, people predicted that the stock market would go down. By the way, guys, if the tariffs were real, the stock market should plunge. I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like if you're actually going to meaningfully change the way that American companies do business, specifically with China, and bring back manufacturing, margin and profit should be destroyed. I'm being real with everybody. That's part of the reason why you have to be, careful whenever you implement this stuff and also message it in a proper way. The fact that the S&P, some 80% of S&P companies are beating earnings expectations for the first time since 2021, that should tell you something, is that, they don't really have to do very much and can continue their margin of business. Wall Street, as you just said, has factored in the ability for all of these major companies to at least maintain, quote, good relations, that's Wall Street speak, with the White House and either get themselves an exemption or find themselves in a way where they can continue some sort of business as usual. The White House gets to claim some X billion dollars a month that they're taking in tariff revenue. Great, okay, but the point is that it will lead to marginal price increase, but not a fundamental way to change business. Just remember this, the Chinese stock market is flat to 2009 effectively. Why? Because they don't care about profit. They care about reinvestment, about manufacturing, and actually changing the way and making themselves autonomous at the end of the day. That's what they care about the most, their real economy. Yeah. So yes, Shanghai stock market doesn't do all that well. That should tell you where our S&P, I don't even know what it would return from 09. Even with all the blips and all of that, it's still, it's unbelievable the amount of returns that we have gotten here. But everyone needs to ask themselves, are you actually richer than you were in 2009? I would bet.
We'll answer that question in a moment.
Yes. Yeah. So with that, we'll give you the view. People liked when we pulled a clip last time, so we pulled one again from Republic TV. Arnab Goswami, he is the Tucker Carlson of India, nationalist over there, supporter of the Modi government. Here is the view from India's one of the more popular television stations.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the nation to really come on together, because it is now Donald Trump versus India. Donald Trump is foolishly, continuously, and desperately announcing a trade war. Day after day, he keeps escalating it. And he's just announced, about an hour back, about total of cumulatively 50% tariffs on India. That's 25% that was already there, and additional 25% because we are buying oil from Russia. So reciprocal and additional 50% MAGA Donald Trump tariffs for India. And we say tonight to Donald Trump, bring it on. Bring it on, ladies and gentlemen. And that's been our response. We've told them that you can't touch us. You can't really impact us.
That's what they're saying there. All right. I mean, listen, are they going to cave? I don't know. So far, the Modi government has put out statements basically saying, screw you. We don't care. We'll pay the tariff. And the line in India is pretty ironic because you guys buy a bunch of hexafluoride and other products from Russia, and then you're coming to us and telling us not to take it. I mean, and by the way, here's the best part. Russian oil refined in an Indian refinery is exempt from the tariffs if you export it to the United States. So if Indian companies export oil to America, they will be exempt from the tariff. Make it make sense.
Incredible.
Make it all make sense. Last update here on the Ukraine front. Let's put A7, please, up on the screen. Trump yesterday said that there was, quote, a good chance that he would meet with Vladimir Putin soon about the war in Ukraine. Apparently, Putin is the one who initiated the meeting during a meeting with Steve Witkoff recently in Moscow. It would also have some sort of trilateral meeting, allegedly. I don't know if this is, all of this still needs to be negotiated, together with Putin and with Zelensky to try and bring an end to the war. I think it would be great if it's actually real, but there's a lot of problems for both countries, and Putin himself has basically called Trump's bluff at every single turn of this. Every time they say that we're going to have a 10-day deadline, 50-day deadline, Medvedev and the government are like, okay, fine. So same with the Indian government so far, same with the Brazilian government. As I said, Indian exports and all that, I'm not going to say it's going to be nothing. It's about 17% or so of their economy is exports to the United States. So 50% would be, it'd be devastating for a significant part of their import-export business. But I recently saw that India will likely attend a meeting of the SCO with the Chinese. They would be meeting with President Xi for the first time since 2019. Apparently, the Russian foreign minister and others are planning trips to New Delhi. So congratulations, to our trade policy now so far. Most other countries have bent the knee to the U.S. I still would not put it past Modi and them. They're trying to play it cool, but they do think that eventually they'll be able to come to some sort of agreement. They don't think this is really about Russia. Maybe they're right. I'm not so sure. But, it is, regardless, what you say publicly does still matter. India has politics, is a democratic nation. Last time I went there, I was shocked at anti-U.S. sentiment. For years, the dream of coming to America and all of that was solid, but the browbeating they took from the Biden administration over the Ukraine conflict, they were furious about it. It really splintered a lot of relations. So I can't even imagine, what this will do.
Yeah.
And this was a close relationship. Trump and Modi, they had an event the first term. It was called like Howdy Modi down in Texas. I mean, this was like a major thing that was sold from the administration about this pivot to Asia, the cultivating of the Indian relationship, and he basically set it on fire in the span of a week. We'll see how it works.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Incredible.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.